Hello, my name is Ailsa, and today I am talking about a few of the, for want of a better word, classic sci-fi and fantasy books which I own, or my boyfriend owns, which I would like to get around to reading this year. Now, one of my goals this year was to read more classic sci-fi and fantasy, and for the purposes of the challenge, what I meant by classic was kind of older science fiction and fantasy, and particularly the books which have had a lot of influence on the genre and ones that get brought up a lot in discussion at conventions and things like that. Because I've read a lot of more modern books, but not so many older ones. There's even a few in here that I would consider older because they're from before I was born, but as they were published in the 1980s, there are probably an awful lot of people who would consider them current books, and I haven't read them yet. So anyway, I've got a long list of books in my head that I would like to read, or authors that I would like to read books by as part of this challenge to kind of broaden my knowledge of the genre. And since we have a few that we own already, then I thought it would make sense to start with those, and I need to actually start thinking about fitting these into my reading plans, because otherwise it'll be October and I will realise that I haven't read any. So let's crack on with the books then. The first one that I want to talk about is IRobot by Isaac Asimov. This is a collection of the robot stories, apparently. I believe that IRobot is a short story. The film adaptation, I gather, is a bit different from the short story, but at the same time is one of my favourite films, so I'm really looking forward to getting to read this, and this is an absolutely gorgeous edition. Maybe that'll be one of the first ones that I get to. The next book I mentioned in a book haul recently, and that is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. As I said before, I didn't realise how long ago this book was published. I'd heard of it without really knowing what it's about, and I'd heard of H.G. Wells, but this was first printed in 1895. I completely did not imagine that it was that old. It's also quite short. That is less than 200 pages. I think, yep, it's about 125 pages. So then again, maybe I'll do this one soon, because 125 pages is something that I can easily fit into my reading plans. I don't know much about it at all, so that's going to be one to talk about a bit more nearer the time. Next up is Neuromancer by William Gibson. This is a science fiction book. Again, I really don't know much about the plot, but it's been talked about a lot. William Gibson is the first person who used the term cyberspace. He is one of those authors who is referred to again and again in discussions about science fiction and its influence on the future and how it can predict the future and things like that. So I'm really interested to get to this, although I have been warned by my boyfriend who's read it that it is quite heavy going in places. The fourth book that I'm hoping to get to this year in part of my challenge to read more classic sci-fi and fantasy is Legend by David Gemmell. David Gemmell, of course, gave his name to the Gemmell Awards, which celebrates fantasy. I've actually started trying to read Legend in the past. A few years ago I was in high school, because my parents had all umpteen million David Gemmell books, but I never quite got into it. I don't know, something about it just didn't pull me in at the time. It was probably just not, I probably just wasn't in the right mood for it. I'm so much of a mood reader, so I don't think it was anything against the book. I think it was just probably not the right time for me to try reading it. So I'm gonna give it a shot now. And then finally, I feel like I've kind of gone in size order a bit here, because my last one is an absolute brick of a book. It's printed on really thin paper, and this is over 850 pages of book, and that is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a novel about King Arthur. It's a particular contrast, I think, to Legend, which is more like epic fantasy, whereas this is a book with some magic in. It is a King Arthur story. I don't always get on with King Arthur stories when they go into the kind of rebirth and things like that, because I just don't like that kind of plot line, but I'm not sure if this goes into that angle. And it is one of the older versions of a King Arthur story, first published in 1939, so yeah, that's a reasonable time ago. I am interested to read it, but that is going to be a bit of a commitment to get to, so I think that might be one that gets held for later in the year, and I'll see how I get on with it then. As I've said before, when I've talked about these books, this is, obviously all of these books are written by men. I haven't been out and picked these books up. These ones that I just happen to have had on my shelves and acquired already, so I will be picking up a few books to buy, but I am interested in finding some books written by women, like before 1990, ideally longer ago than that, that kind of fit into that area of being science fiction or fantasy books that people talk about a lot, that other people build on, and things like that. So if you have any recommendation for any other books that I should be looking out for to include in this reading project of mine, then do let me know in the comments, or if you've read any of these, I would love to hear what you thought of them, and I will be back soon with another video. Bye!